Good evening, campers, dreamers, and babysitters. I'm Luke Janesco, and welcome back to the channel. Ever since we checked out Final Destination Bloodlines at the theater, I've been wanting to do a little bit of a deeper dive once it hit VOD. I didn't have any real high expectations going into the film, but walking out of the theater, it was such a good watch. I wanted to cut this one open a little deeper and unpack some of the things that make this such a strong installment in the Final Destination franchise. So if you haven't seen the film, be warned, we are going throughout the entire film, so there are major spoilers throughout this video. And so I don't get a comment on it, guys, seriously, there are major spoilers. But without further ado, let's put Final Destination Bloodlines under the microscope and take a look. Horror is known for its subgenres, crazy concepts, and probably most notably, its franchises. Franchise horror is a staple in the genre. You can never escape a year in horror without an established IP getting another chapter, whether we asked for it or not.
Alright, meat sacks. Let's get to work.
In the 2000s, there have been some interesting creations that vary in quality, but one franchise from concept alone that I became enamored with just because of the ability to create both fun and tension. That, of course, being Final Destination. Starting my intro into the franchise with Final Destination 2 on a bootleg DVD, I discovered the original on television shortly after, and those two films just became the perfect 1-2 punch.
Alex, let's go take a shit.
Providing a magically macabre story and scenes that will be burned into our brains forever, Final Destination officially had me hungry to see what this franchise would do with the concept because it was so different than a lot of the other popular horror at the time. Integrating some really gory effects, but adding in a mix of comedy and lightheartedness would give horror fans a different experience against franchises like Saw and a lot of the zombie flicks at the time. As horror got deeper in the 2000s, the focus of other subgenres changed as studios became more interested in the supernatural subgenre with properties like Insidious, The Conjuring, and Paranormal Activity winning audiences' wallets at the box office. While the Final Destination installments did well internationally, Final Destination 5 failed to produce domestically, and the studio decided to put the over-decade-old franchise on the shelf while they conjured up new scares with different properties. Trying to get another installment off the ground, the studio decided with the creation of the streaming platform HBO Max, it was time to let death loose directly into our homes. Creating the next chapter in the Final Destination franchise for the streaming platform, Marcus Dunstan and Patrick Melton, who are no strangers to franchise horror themselves, creating scripts for Feast, The Collector, and Saw, were chosen to develop a script. Centering the script around death, setting his sights on first responders, with the initial premonition being a tunnel collapse. While being a strong script, the third act had some issues that needed to be worked out, and while trying to reinvigorate that Dunstan-Melton version, a regime change happened at the studio as well as the pandemic hitting severely altered the direction of that version. After hearing a pitch from John Watts, who wanted to make the Final Destination franchise a family affair, the creatives in charge decided it might not be best to kill off first responders in a post-COVID world, so they decided to change direction. Hosting a pitch fest off the concept from Watts, producers of the Final Destination franchise, Craig Perry and Sheila Hannah Taylor, listened to screenwriters throw around ideas in a direction to flesh out that narrative. Among these writers were Guy Busick from Abigail, Ready or Not, and Scream fame, as well as Laurie Evans Taylor, who wrote and directed Bed Rest, starring Melissa Barrera. The producers being enamored by both writers, but both being attached to upcoming projects, Busick and Taylor decided to team up and take on death as a screenwriting version of the Mega Powers.
Oh, right there, big man.
Sure, wasn't a hit over the head, Macho Man.
Oh, no.
Moving away from the Dunstan and Melton script, the studio had a new vision of where they wanted to take the franchise after over a decade-long absence. But what exactly did that look like? Now with new writers, concept, and a totally different direction? Well, let's cut this one open and take a look. If you're not first, you're last as this cursed red car races down the street, but it doesn't have the fury of Christine, and it ain't Arnie Cunningham behind the wheel. No, not our nerd-turned-nutcase. Instead, we meet our happy couple, Iris and Paul, as they arrive at the Skyview. They enjoy the view as the scent of love and maybe a little death is in the air. Ah, I can't think of a better smell.
That's just about the finest smell in the world. Except maybe for pussy.
Hey, easy now, you old fart. Let's keep it classy. Sneaking in for an evening for dinner and dancing, Iris runs to the bathroom as we find out Paul should have made a reservation for 3 instead of 2. Grabbing some fresh air on top of the Skyview, Iris tells Paul their family tree is about to get another branch as they plan to tie the knot. They get interrupted by this problem child, but this kid and his penny pack more punch than any Jake Paul fight.
The exhibition against Roy Jones, where he averaged 24 punches around.
You suck, you jackass.
Hitting the dance floor, the would-be newlyweds decide to cut a rug, but it gets cut short when we realize the Skyview must have hired the same construction crew from Jaws 3. The bodies hit the floor and Paul tries to hang on, but we realize his arm strength is as weak as his pull-out game when he falls to his death. Catching fire at the Skyview, it looks like all the orders this evening are going to be a little well done.
You're cooking in a burnt pan, you fucking dick!
The shoddy structure starts to take a tumble, getting more than a penny for their thoughts, making sure Death racks up a kill streak like this is goddamn Call of Duty. Iris falls to her death as we find out this is all her premonition. Oh fuck, who the hell is that? This was such a wild ride as an opening premonition, and going into the film, I was more than a little hesitant. That opening premonition is the bread and butter of the franchise. A lot of people think back to those openings when they're trying to decipher each installment. I'd only seen 2 pieces of marketing prior to watching the film, which were the teaser cookout scene, and which I'll talk about a little bit later, but I do love that one, and a still picture from an article with the Skyview, and seeing that CGI building got me a little nervous because there are a few installments where some of the CGI is just gross out bad. I think most of us can agree the Final Destination is the worst offender both visually and conceptually because it just felt like it was a spectacle set piece rather than dialing into the fears, which is what the Final Destination films are all about. Some of the best premonitions are the ones we can relate to. They tap into the deep-rooted fear we have and automatically make us tense when we see it unfold on screen. The original is epic because going into the franchise, we didn't know how they were going to pull that off, and realizing it was a premonition grabbed your interest right away. The original coming out in 2000 and then being rewatched in a post-9/11 world made the fear of flying even more amplified, which is why I think that one works even more now than it did upon its release. The sequels seem to unlock a whole new fear for audiences, and I don't know about you, but when I'm on the highway and I see a giant truck carrying almost anything, I switch lanes and try to make it a memory as quick as possible.
I don't know, but I say unless you want to look exactly like it, we make this place a memory right now.
The premonition at the Skyview is a really basic concept, leaning on that fear of heights, but I felt so tense just like Iris. Getting into that crowded elevator, hearing how the structure was finished early, are all great little tidbits of anxiety before all hell breaks loose. Watching the floor break underneath the patron's feet was a nice touch as well. I made a joke about Jaws 3, but as a kid, I had a huge fear of aquariums because of that film. Seeing the glass crack at the Skyview gave me those exact same feelings. Originally, John Watts had pitched a different opening premonition with a riverboat that was for illegal gambling, which did make it into a handful of drafts, but the creatives behind Bloodlines made the switch feeling that choosing the Skyview concept was different enough from Final Destination 5 in its presentation to get audiences invested. Another one of Watts' ideas that was a big part of Bloodlines was the premonition not being Iris's, but passing it down to our main character Stephanie. This being the 6th installment, we all know the flow of these films, but adding that extra layer of switching whose premonition this was and how it was going to make sense had me all in to see what the rest of the story looked like. Heading home from school to find out what the hell is going on, Stephanie's oh-so-sweet family reunion turns a little sour when she starts questioning Uncle Howard about her maniac Meemaw. Showing up at Granny's doorstep seems a little more complicated than Stephanie thought, as Iris has taken a page out of Laurie Strode's book. Stephanie may be flunking college, but Grandma Iris is going to make sure she has a PhD in death and dying as she explains the Grim Reaper is hosting a party and the Campbell family is invited. Stephanie's supernatural skepticism makes Iris break her own rules, and stepping out of her she-shed, Iris passes her Book of the Dead to Stephanie before she RSVPs to Death's guest list.
Groovy.
Realizing Iris wasn't irrational after all, Stephanie studies her book to keep the Campbell family breathing. She's a little late when she crashes the family barbecue, and Death has already made an appearance, kicking up his feet and making Uncle Howard's face into hamburger meat. When we talk franchise horror, unfortunately as we get deeper and deeper into those installments, it seems like the studios are less interested in bringing new dynamics and creativity. They're more interested in doubling down on what we've seen before in those franchises previously to get as much return as possible. Films like Jason Lives and Bride of Chucky are some of my favorites in their respective franchises because of the interest in making those chapters feel different rather than doing the same thing over and over again. After walking out of Bloodlines, I'm able to put that in the conversation as well, honestly not expecting a lot of the film initially, then realizing the story passes on Iris's premonition to Stephanie in a way that adds to the Final Destination lore and feels organic, made me feel confident on how the rest of the story was going to unfold. The framework laid in the original film made me love the franchise, and even getting some more lore in the 5th film was an unexpected surprise, but going into Bloodlines, my thought was, what more can you add to make any sort of surprising change? But seeing Iris prevent the death of everyone at the Skyview, then laying out how death had been stalking the survivors for decades and taking out everyone's families one by one was an exciting premise that played with the rules that were already set in the franchise, and it really gave this film a flavor that reinvigorated the Final Destination premise. Looking back of what we know of the Dunstan and Melton script, while it could have been just a fun take in general, I feel like that could have just been another disposable Final Destination flick, giving us some cool kills but not really driving the concept forward. The Bloodlines concept from Watts feels like he had realized the potential and versatility of the franchise. As Stephanie lays out the family tree of terror to the Campbells, not everyone is receptive to Death's planned farewell tour for the family. Even though Steph has such sights to show him, Eric is blind to his lethal lineage, heading to work to, well, poke holes in people like he's a goddamn Cenobite. Tangled in a web of emotion becomes quite literal when Eric's nose ring gets tangled in a ceiling fan. Death, you crazy bastard, I don't know how you did it, but you're one crafty motherfucker. Things get a little toasty as the tattoo parlor catches fire and Eric meets his demise to be reunited with his dear old dad, Howard.
Come to daddy.
Finding out the tattoo shop burned down, Steph and Charlie almost run down a pedestrian, but this ain't Ben Tramer. It looks like Eric escaped death as he explains his leather jacket saved his life. I knew Sean Hunter was onto something.
Well, look at him.
Stephanie contemplates her incorrect prediction when Julia goes for a run and gets taken out with the trash as the gang tries to save her. There's no escaping death for Julia since Derek Vineyard must be at the wheel as Julia's jaw gets rearranged worse than that dude from American History X. Clearing up the miscommunication of carnage, Eric didn't escape death. No, he just isn't on the Grim Reaper's hit list because when Mom April had a cookout of her own, well, she wanted the hot dogs raw, making Eric not part of the Campbell bloodline. I really love the sort of bait and switch they did with the supposed Eric death, and then the unveiling of Eric not being Howard's biological son. Going back to the original premonition, and then Stephanie laying out how death is coming for every family spawned from the patrons at the Skyview, this is just another element to the story that makes use of the concept. Eric at the tattoo parlor was a scene I wasn't interested in because it was released in the marketing, and in a world where a lot of films tend to get over-marketed and spoiled in the trailers, but Bloodlines got me hooked when they subverted the expectation. Seeing that scene released, my hesitation was that marketing is showing too much, but when we see it actually play out in the theater, it was just so gratifying. Showing that cookout scene and Howard's death in its entirety, then following it up with what we thought was Eric's death, that just really pulled the rug out from under us in the theater and got me really questioning everything else we were going to see for the rest of the film. Final Destination has always delivered on creative kills, and that is a big portion of the fun in the franchise, but when you weave in an interesting twist with the story and get your audience to start questioning how and when it's going to happen, that's when this franchise works the best.
Death's not coming for our family.
Even though the Final Destination franchise never had that central character like Tommy Jarvis, Nancy Thompson, or Laurie Strode, the creatives chose horror icon Tony Todd as this oracle of death throughout most of these installments. While his appearances were brief, Todd always made the most of his screen time, delivering both memorable as well as eerie scenes that added so much to the aura of the franchise. During the creation of the script, Busick and Thompson were both excited but a little hesitant to incorporate the Bloodworth character, knowing that this character has been so closely aligned with the franchise and is near and dear to horror audiences' hearts. After the news of Todd's passing in November of 2024, it set in for a lot of people, and I know it did for me, that this would be the last time we would see Todd on screen in a theater setting. The Candyman was a pivotal horror icon for me as a kid in the 90s, maybe even more so than Jason Voorhees or Michael Myers because of the urban legend surrounding that actual character. I remember being dared by my brother and sister to go into the bathroom and say Candyman into the mirror, and it always felt like that character had a sense of realism to the lore. Saying goodbye to a caliber of an actor like Tony Todd, who had so many iconic roles, made this theater experience for Bloodlines highly emotional, and the way they chose to handle his send-off is one of the all-time best in horror cinema.
Good luck.
After our horror oracle lays out all the rules Death likes to play by, the dynamic duo Eric and Bobby hatch a plan to save everyone. Feeling a little nuts by using Bobby's peanut allergy to their advantage, Eric wants to play a game of live, die, repeat by having Bobby choke down some nuts, then reanimate him like this is Return of the Living Dead.
I have seen weird things come, and I have seen weird things go.
Knowing he's here for a good time, not a long time, and being a man of culture, Bobby picks peanut butter cups as his last meal. Unaware the MRI machine is increasing in magnetization, Bobby takes a bite of that delicious chocolate-coated peanut butter, letting that sweet treat tickle his taste buds. I never figured eating a peanut butter cup could be so tension-filled. It has to be one of the best ways to die, only second to being strangled by Rhea Ripley's legs. As Bobby loses his breath, Eric realizes that medical equipment is a little too durable when he gets pulled into the MRI machine like he's Slinky Dog in Toy Story 3.
We'll be okay if we stay together. Slinky!
Bobby joins his brother shortly after as Death takes a chapter out of the Voorhees playbook, giving him that Crispin Glover treatment.
Ted! Hey, Ted, where the hell's corkscrew?
Like a lot of people, I think Eric, played by Richard Harmon, easily stole the show with his performance in Bloodlines. He had a lot of great moments as this wise-ass brother, but his relationship with Bobby really solidified how much I enjoyed his character, and it made it that much more heartbreaking when he meets his demise, trying to help his brother escape death as well as the rest of the group. When we are introduced to the Campbell family, Bobby looks like the stereotypical jock character, but as we go through the film, we find that softness in his character that really shows that different dynamic. As we build up to the death of both Eric and Bobby, they give us this heartfelt line from Eric saying he's going to take care of Bobby, and while their deaths provide a jaw-dropping moment, the build-up to that and the mixture of comedy, tension, and line delivery between those two characters made this feel like one of the biggest highlights of the film.
I promise you I'm not gonna let you die.
Taking that concept of Bloodlines and showcasing these different relationships posed to be a difficult task because of all the emotion our characters need to show. One of the biggest tasks in a film like this is getting a group of characters together as they try to escape death. We've seen classmates, co-workers, and just a lot of random people thrown together, but using a whole family had just a different emotional connection entirely. The balance became the characters had to mourn death in an appropriate way or else they're monsters, but not too long, or else the film becomes a little too somber and becomes too emotionally heavy. Bloodlines feels like it was able to create that emotional connection between the audience and its characters because of the chemistry and pacing throughout. The writer's strike hindered the initial production of Bloodlines. The crew was working with a script that was turned in the day before the strike began, which gave them an interesting obstacle. Since they were unable to redo an actual script, the actors were prepping to improv a lot of things during production, just being able to play off each other. Having the strike end and getting the production back on track, they didn't have to improv as planned, but prepping scenes like that with those characters really helped build a lot of the chemistry that shines through on screen. Showing some motherly love, Darlene and the kids hit the road to Iris's cabin as Darlene plans to make it a permanent getaway from Death. Breaking into Iris's fortress, Death already had a plan to chop down the rest of the Campbell family tree when the cabin explodes and Darlene's heartfelt moment with Charlie gets dimmed when a light post crushes her. Breathing life back into Big Sis Steph like he's David Hasselhoff, Charlie lets Death know when you're a junior lifeguard, bringing the dead back is child's play.
Prove it.
Dressed to kill, Charlie gets ready for prom, but things get a little derailed when the brother and sister start to realize Death said this isn't goodbye, instead it's see you soon, as this locomotive gets a little sidetracked when this midnight meat train crashes prom night to pick up Steph and Charlie as Death takes them on a non-stop ride to hell.
I'll see you soon.
Looking back at the film, I would say my biggest critique was the final face-off with Death at Iris's cabin. I found it entertaining, but it just felt similar to things we'd seen in the franchise, and with the creative punch the film delivered up until that point, I just wanted something that delivered that as well. I do like the dynamic of Darlene trying to save her children, since that was a reshoot that happened 7 months later after the production had ended. Originally, Darlene had died at the hospital when the L in the hospital sign fell on her, but after focus groups had wanted some more of Stephanie and Darlene, the crew rebuilt some of the set and reshot the ending to give us more of that mother-daughter dynamic. Adding that element to the end of the film really did make it feel like it had more stakes, and without it, I feel like closing the film with just Stephanie and Charlie wouldn't have had the same impact. The final scene in the film is a fun misdirect, making Stephanie and Charlie believe they had beaten death in the same manner as Kimberly, only to have them meet their fate when the train derails, hurling logs as they try to escape. It gave fans a fun nod to the lore, but then also gave us that kick in the nuts that the franchise is famous for.
Right in the nuts! That was beautiful!
Final Destination Bloodlines feels like a real love letter to the franchise, knowing what makes these installments great and adding a new spin to keep us engaged. Providing one of the most fun theatrical experiences of the year, I'm glad even watching this on VOD, it still holds up and provides endless rewatchability. Making a killing at the box office, it's almost a certainty we will be seeing another installment down the line. Showcasing how much potential this franchise has for its characters and storytelling, this should be looked at as motivation by other franchises to push the creative narrative and deliver something fun for horror fans. Since hitting VOD, I've watched this film 2 more times just to create this video, and it just gets more and more fun upon each rewatch, and it makes me appreciate it that much more. So I hope you enjoyed Final Destination Bloodlines, and I hope you enjoyed this video as well. And if you're new here to Splattercast, please give us a like, a share, and maybe even subscribe if you like our content, because we've got plenty more coming your way. But until next time, I'm Luke Ginesco, and stay scared.
Do the horse shit, gonna do it live, cause Splattercast kick it every day they live. Splattercast, gonna smash your ass. 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 Splattercast, gonna smash your ass.